When we talk about maritime incidents with these sanctions-busting ships, we usually think of the hot spots.
Right, the Black Sea, maybe the Bosphorus.
Exactly. But the story we're diving into today is about a Russian-linked oil tanker, the Mercen. It suffered some major, very suspicious damage.
And the location is the real story.
It is. It's thousands of miles away from where you'd expect, near Senegal.
This incident is, well, it's a pivotal moment, I think. It completely shifts the geography of where these Russian assets are actually vulnerable. So we're focusing on the Mercen, and it just raises these critical questions about security, about exposure for ships operating so far from any traditional conflict zone.
And it's not an isolated event, is it?
Not entirely. What makes this so compelling is that it's reportedly the third similar incident we've seen with Russian Shadow Fleet assets in, less than a week?
But the methods are completely different.
Radically different, and that's key.
That distinction, the location, the method, that's exactly what we need to get into. So our mission today is to look at the damage itself, these four surprising internal explosions.
Yeah.
We'll explain what this Shadow Fleet is, why it matters, and I think most importantly, analyze what this location, Dakar, tells us about the potential capabilities, the reach of whoever is behind this.
Let's start with the facts of the incident itself.
Okay, what do we know for sure?
Well, the facts, once you sort of peel back the initial uncertainty, they point to something deliberate, to severe damage.
And we're talking about a big ship.
Oh, absolutely. The Mercen is a sizable vessel. It's 83 meters long, displacing over 50,000 tons.
And it was carrying diesel.
A full cargo of diesel.
And the key thing here, the damage wasn't from, say, a missile or a drone strike from the outside. The reports are all claiming internal explosions.
That is the crucial detail. 4 distinct concurrent internal explosions.
And the damage from that was pretty bad.
Substantial enough to breach the tanker's hull in multiple places. That allowed seawater to just flood into the engine room, into the stern section.
We've seen some of the videos going around, and they show the tanker sitting incredibly low in the water.
Yeah, by the stern. It just shows you how much flooding took place. The crew was evacuated.
And the official Russian line is that it was all stabilized pretty quickly.
Well, Russian state media made those claims, but maritime analysts are rightly cautious. They suggest those reports often inflate the ship's actual stability. A bit of typical Russian twaddle, perhaps.
Understandable skepticism, given the scale of the damage.
Absolutely. And you look at the registration, the Mercen is officially registered in Panama. That's an immediate red flag in this context.
Of course. And so where is this 50,000-ton disabled ship right now?
It's disabled, lying right in the harbor of Dakar, Senegal. It's resting in about 28 meters of water with no power.
And the timeline here is fascinating. It wasn't just passing through.
Not at all. Look, she sailed from Taman in Russia way back on August 20th. She got to Togo in mid-September and had been anchored off Dakar since September 25th.
So over 2 months.
Over 2 months. Just sitting there at a West African harbor before this happened.
2 months just sitting there thousands of miles from any war zone, and then bang! A series of calculated internal blasts.
Oh, exactly.
That brings us to the strategic context then. Why this specific tanker? And what does hitting part of this Shadow Fleet so far away actually mean?
It matters because the Mercen isn't just some random ship. It's a dedicated economic tool. Shipping analytics firms have confirmed it's a key part of what we call Russia's Shadow Fleet.
And this isn't a small thing.
No, this is an entire parallel ecosystem designed specifically for one thing: sanctions defiance.
For listeners who might hear that term Shadow Fleet but don't know the nitty-gritty, what exactly defines it?
Well, it's a network, mostly of older oil and gas tankers. They're often bought at inflated prices by these obscure, sometimes newly formed companies.
So they're hard to trace?
Very. And they operate completely outside of traditional Western frameworks. No Western insurance, no Western banking, no real regulatory oversight.
And that's where the Panama registration comes in, the flag of convenience.
It's central to their whole strategy. By registering in places with relaxed oversight, they can hide who really owns the ship, and they can avoid all the strict compliance checks you'd get otherwise.
So it's not just a bit of paperwork, it's proof they're trying to dodge the system.
Precisely. And the Mercen's own history confirms it. It was documented calling up Russian ports again and again this year. It's a workhorse for moving oil and gas that's meant to be under sanctions.
Now, you mentioned this was the third incident in a week involving Russian maritime assets. But this one feels different. The other two were drone strikes, right? In the Black Sea.
The difference is stark.
Hmm.
A Marine drone strike near the coast is, it's public, it's immediate, it's a military strike.
Against a naval ship or in a busy shipping lane.
Exactly. The Mercen incident is an attack on the economic lifeline. It's in a place that's supposed to be neutral and secure, and it uses this specialized method, internal sabotage, that just sends a completely different signal.
It's almost like the target isn't just the ship itself, but the entire system of sanctions evasion.
That's a great way to put it. It raises the cost of doing business globally for anyone in this illicit network.
It's a message.
It is. If you connect this to the bigger picture, hitting a Shadow Fleet vessel this far away shows a willingness to impose global risk on anyone defying sanctions. It says, your attempts to bypass our economic pressure, there's no safe harbor for you. Geographically, nowhere is safe.
So let's talk more about that method. 4 internal explosions. The ship's manager confirmed they were internal. What does that suggest about the complexity of this operation?
Well, it raises this really important question about capabilities, operational capabilities, so far from the main theater. If the explosions were truly internal, it implies that somebody successfully placed explosive charges deep inside the vessel, most likely below the waterline, or maybe within the engine compartment, which would explain the flooding.
That's a completely different skill set than launching a drone. An external drone strike is about brute force. It's visible. This is different.
It's about infiltration. This requires intelligence, access, and a very careful placement of the charges.
It speaks to human intelligence, doesn't it? Operational reach.
It does. I mean, to get these charges onto a 50,000-ton vessel sitting in a foreign harbor, you need deep cover, or at the very least, you need an operative who can get temporary access. This is a quiet, surgical operation. The message is about infiltration, not just overwhelming force.
And we've seen this pattern before, which I think is crucial context here. Even if we don't know who targeted the Mercen, this isn't the first time we've seen this kind of non-traditional, distant sabotage against Russian maritime assets.
That's absolutely critical to remember. We have historical precedents. They point very strongly towards similar methods being used outside the Black Sea.
Like what?
Well, last year, for instance, there were multiple reports of other Russian Shadow Fleet tankers suffering internal explosions to cause. Explosive charges reportedly placed inside them, again causing massive damage far from the combat zone.
And these weren't happening right next to Russian ports either.
Not at all. We're talking about a demonstrated reach. There was a tanker off Gibraltar that also reportedly suffered an internal explosion attributed to sabotage. And then you have the incident with the Burnham corvette in Kenigrad, way up north. That was sabotage with an incendiary device. It shows this consistent, non-traditional doctrine being used against Russian assets well outside the immediate war zone.
So, okay. We have a history of internal explosions. We have evidence of capabilities far afield. And now we have the Mercen, hit in the busy international harbor of Dakar, Senegal. Why Senegal? It seems like a staggeringly difficult place to pull this off.
It does. But what's fascinating here is the circumstantial evidence. The reason Senegal is even in this conversation about deep strike capability is because of a past admission.
An admission? From who?
From Ukraine. They previously admitted they had specific plans, which, okay, they were ultimately canceled, but they had plans to target a Russian Navy patrol ship.
And where was that ship?
It was docked for maintenance in Senegal.
Wait. They publicly confirmed they had a plan to operate that far south on the West African coast.
They did. And that admission alone suggests that they do have, or at least they did have, some sort of operatives or another in Senegal, people with the capability and the logistical footprint to potentially pull off an operation like planting charges on a tanker.
It demonstrates an established, or at least an attempted, operational foothold.
Exactly. In a region that, everyone has traditionally viewed as completely secure, completely out of the picture.
So the thinking is, the logistical risk of operating in Dakar is high, but it's offset by the strategic advantage of showing the entire Shadow Fleet that you can reach them anywhere.
That's the analysis. The location amplifies the message of the method. It forces this entire illicit shipping community to just, tear up their risk assessments, no matter how far they are from the perceived front lines.
And we do have to stress for you listening, despite all these historical connections and geographical admissions, the direct involvement of any specific group in the Mercen incident is, right now, definitely unconfirmed.
Absolutely. We're analyzing patterns, potential capabilities. We are not assigning blame.
Right. But regardless of who did it, the ship is now disabled. It's far from home, sitting low in a very busy international harbor. So that brings us to the aftermath. What happens now? For this massive, disabled tanker with 50,000 tons of diesel in Dakar.
Well, the incident immediately shifts from a security issue to a massive logistical and potential environmental headache for the Senegalese authorities.
I can imagine.
The vessel is apparently stabilized and under tug assistance, but the risk is still incredibly high, especially if they can't seal those breaches quickly.
And what are the biggest dangers they're facing right now?
The main challenge is sealing the hull breaches, restoring that watertight integrity, especially in the engine room, which is still submerged.
But the cargo makes everything worse.
The fuel cargo constantly exacerbates the danger of destabilization, because if the vessel shifts too much or they try to move it the wrong way, the damage could get worse, and you could be looking at a catastrophic spill.
A huge environmental event.
Exactly. So right now, a critical and inherently dangerous operation is underway: cargo transfer.
Pumping the fuel off.
They have to carefully pump the diesel off the Mercen and onto other vessels. It lightens the load. It avoids destabilizing it further while they try to patch and pump. It's slow, meticulous work in a busy port. It just highlights the immense headache this one act of sabotage has created.
This isn't just about fixing a ship. It's about managing a 50,000-ton floating bomb.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
This whole saga, from the attack method to the distant location, it's just a fascinating and, frankly, a deeply concerning look into the new reality of how this conflict and sanctions enforcement is playing out.
It really is. It shows how economic warfare translates into kinetic reality on the world's oceans.
So let's recap. We've seen a vessel defying sanctions thousands of miles from the main war zone become the target of this mysterious attack. It features internal explosions, a method that uses infiltration and surgical skill, not just brute force.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, the implication is that the operational map is just expanded exponentially. The ability to project this kind of unconventional capability, or even just the threat of it, so far into supposedly secure global shipping lanes. It means the calculation for every single shadow fleet operator has to change immediately.
That perceived safety margin they had.
It's vanished.
And maybe that uncertainty, that need to constantly look over their shoulder, maybe that's the most effective weapon of all.
Precisely. And consider this as a final thought for you to take away. The ultimate goal of this kind of deep strike operation may not just be the physical damage. That can be repaired, the ship can be salvaged. The primary goal could be psychological. It's about inflicting damage and massive cost on the entire sanctions evasion system.
Because if a huge tanker isn't safe while sitting in a supposedly neutral harbor like Dakar,
Then where, globally, are these shadow fleet operations truly safe from potential sabotage? That pervasive uncertainty.
yeah,
It just makes the business of defying international law vastly more expensive, more dangerous, and ultimately unsustainable.